So today we're going to be jumping into topic 2, lesson 4, the Phoenician Empire. So what you're going to do first is you're going to go to the classwork tab on Google Classroom and then open up the e-text. Once you have the e-text open, it'll bring you to this page right here, first page of this chapter. And after that's all done, we go over to the digital notebook. Once you get this opened up, you'll see that for this lesson we have 10 slides. And instead of last week having 5 vocab words, we're going to have 6. So it's going to take up the first 2 slides of this. We'll be jumping into that a little bit later. We'll be defining those words. But without further ado, let's get into this lesson.
Lesson 4. The Phoenicians. The Mediterranean Sea forms the western boundary of the Fertile Crescent. The Phoenician civilization began here, on a thin strip of land along the Mediterranean coast, in what is now Lebanon. Like Sumer, Phoenicia consisted of city-states. Although Phoenicia was small in size, it had an important influence on the region's history. Get ready to read. Start at.
Okay, so if you scroll to the bottom of this page, we have our guided questions. Don't have to worry about those. We'll get into those a little bit later in the lesson. But we also have our vocab words for this week. So when we're defining these words on these 2 slides here, it's best to get the vocab definition by either clicking on these or by going to the presentation that has all the definitions on there. If you go to Google, there's a good chance you can get a different definition, so let's avoid that entirely. So our vocab words for this week are import, which is a good or service sold within a country that is produced in another country. We have export, which is a good or service produced within a country and sold outside the country's borders. We have navigation, which is the art of steering a ship from place to place. Colony, which is a group of people living in a new territory with ties to a distant state. Cultural diffusion, which is the spread of cultural traits from one culture to another. And the alphabet, which is a small set of letters or symbols, each of which stands for a single sound. So make sure you define these. I'm going to pause the video and take the time to copy those down. So now that we have all those copied down, I'm going to scroll back up here and click right here on the watch the video, the alphabet. So click that. Let's get started.
Knowing our ABCs opens the door to reading and writing. By learning just 26 letters, we share complex ideas or lose ourselves in a world of stories. In English-speaking countries, we're taught the letters of the English alphabet. Have you ever wondered where those letters came from? You might think it was the Greeks. After all, the word alphabet comes from the first 2 Greek letters, alpha and beta, like our A and B. That's a good guess. However, the Greeks learned their form of writing from the Phoenicians, a Mediterranean people who were intrepid traders and merchants. Before the Phoenicians, the main written language used a series of symbols called cuneiform. Interestingly, cuneiform is a writing system, not a language, and it doesn't have letters. It uses roughly 600 to 1,000 symbols to create syllables or words. This means that cuneiform is not an alphabet. So, why did the Phoenicians create a new writing system that consisted of only 22 letters? To answer that, you need to understand who the Phoenicians were. Phoenicians didn't have many natural resources of their own in the small kingdom they controlled near present-day Lebanon. So, they had to trade for what they needed. They were excellent sailors who navigated throughout the Mediterranean Sea and beyond, down the coast of Africa and up the coast of Spain, all the way to Britain. Can you think of any reason a simple written language would be useful? Consider the number of different people with whom the Phoenicians traded and the many languages they spoke. Also, think about all the records a Phoenician trader had to keep. Sales and orders, cargo lists, ships and destinations, reports about clients, and even news. You get the idea. Now, which of these two options would be easier? Teach all of your trading partners the hundreds of cuneiform symbols needed to communicate, or create a simple 22-letter alphabet that everyone could learn? Let's see how the Phoenician alphabet influenced our English alphabet. Here are 4 Phoenician letters. The Greeks and Phoenicians were trading partners, and the Greeks based their alphabet on the Phoenicians. These are the ancient Greek letters. Eventually, the Romans used the Greek alphabet as a basis for the Latin language. As the Romans built their empire, Latin became a common language from Italy all the way to Britain, where it became the English ABCs. Why do you think the use of the Phoenician alphabet by the Greeks and Romans was so important?
Okay, so now we watch that video, have a little bit of a background on who the Phoenicians were, we're going to get into the rest of our lesson. So pause the video and we'll be right back. So now what we're going to want to do is go to slide number 3 on our digital notebook. We're starting with who were the Phoenicians? So back to your e-text, click next. And let's get started.
Who were the Phoenicians? The Phoenicians were fearless sailors who guided ships full of trade goods through ocean waters. For hundreds of years, they dominated sea trade across the Mediterranean, just as the earlier Greek Minoan people had done. Origins. Phoenician society developed from the earlier Canaanites. The Canaanites were a people who lived in parts of what are now Israel, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria. Nearby Egypt had a strong influence on Canaan. In fact, Egypt controlled parts of Canaan off and on from around 1500 BCE to 1150 BCE. Phoenician society began to emerge after Egyptian rule ended. The independent Phoenician city-states soon prospered. In general, the rulers of Phoenician city-states were priest kings who shared power with leading merchant families and a citizen assembly. Farming and manufacturing. Geography greatly influenced Phoenicia's development. The Lebanon Mountains formed Phoenicia's eastern border. These heavily forested mountains sloped down close to the Mediterranean coast, leaving little flat land for farming. Phoenicians manufactured a number of goods. Weavers created cloth that they colored with a rare purple dye made from tiny sea snails. They sold this purple cloth for high prices. Skilled Phoenician craftsworkers made pottery and glass and metal objects. They also used trees to make wood furniture. Phoenician traders. Phoenicia had few natural resources of its own, so the Phoenicians traded with other cultures for resources and goods. Phoenician traders brought back many imports. An import is a good or service sold within a country that is produced in another country. Most Phoenician imports were raw materials, including gold, silver, tin, copper, iron, ivory, and precious stones. Phoenician craftsworkers used these raw materials to make bronze and silver bowls, iron tools and weapons, and gold jewelry. Traders shipped these goods, as well as pine and cedar logs, wine, olive oil, salt, fish, and other goods, as exports to ports across the Mediterranean. An export is a good or service produced within a country and sold outside the country's borders. Reading check. Identify cause and effect. Why did the...
Okay, so looking at question 1. What were the products that Phoenicia imported and exported? You'll be able to find the answer in this blue highlighted area. So pause the video and get that taken care of. Okay, so moving on to question number 2. You will see here that it is highlighted and in red, which means it is a quiz question. So, the goods made and shipped by Phoenicians to other lands are called. You'll be able to find that answer in this yellow circled area. So pause the video and get that jotted down. So moving on to slide number 4, you're going to click next one more time. So 2 clicks total. Okay, let's get started.
How did Phoenicians use the sea? Phoenicia's location was ideal for trade. It lay on the western edge of Asia, within sailing distance of Europe and Africa. Several overland trade routes from the east ended in Phoenicia. As a result, many peoples came to depend on the Phoenicians to ship their trade goods across the Mediterranean Sea.
So, question number 1. Where was the Phoenician Empire located? You'll be able to find the answer to this in this pink highlighted area. So pause the video and find that answer. Okay, so for this next paragraph, navigation, this contains answers to questions both on slide 4 and on slide 5. So while it's being read out loud, pause the video whenever you feel that you have to. Replay the video whenever you think you have to get all the questions needed for that. But let's get into it.
Navigation. Because of Phoenicia's location between the Mediterranean and the Lebanon Mountains, Phoenicians turned to the sea to trade. They became experts at navigation, or the art of steering a ship from place to place. Phoenician sailors developed a thorough knowledge of wind patterns and ocean currents. At first, the Phoenicians sailed and traded among nearby lands. Later, they took their ships to new areas.
So, question number 2, slide number 4. How did geography influence Phoenician development? You'll be able to find that answer in this green highlighted area here. So pause the video if needed. So now you can move on to to slide number 5. Slide number 5, we have the question number 3, which is, what is navigation? You can find that in the pink highlighted area. Take a moment to get that answer down. Pause the video if needed. And then for question number 4, why do you think so many people considered the Phoenicians great sailors? That answer can be found in the blue area at the bottom of the paragraph. So pause the video if you need to and get that answer. So moving on to slide number 6. See, we are still on how did the Phoenicians use the sea? So it's still at the bottom of this page. Okay, so let's press play.
Exploring unknown waters. From Phoenicia, the Phoenicians sailed south and west past Egypt and along the North African coast. Others traveled north and west past the Balkan and Italian peninsulas. They explored the Mediterranean islands of Sicily and Sardinia. In time, the Phoenicians reached the Iberian Peninsula at the western end of the Mediterranean Sea. Today, this land includes Spain and Portugal. After passing the southern tip of Iberia, Phoenician sailors left the Mediterranean for the Atlantic Ocean. Some sailed north along the Iberian coast, and a few traveled all the way to Britain. Others headed south to West Africa. Phoenician sailors showed great courage by sailing far into unknown waters. But why did they keep traveling ever farther from home? Some historians think that the Phoenicians were driven to find precious metals. Indeed, the Phoenicians traded for silver in Iberia and gold in West Africa. An ancient Greek historian described how Phoenicians profited from the silver trade. Primary source. Now the natives were ignorant of the use of the silver, and the Phoenicians purchased the silver in exchange for other goods of little, if any, worth. And this was the reason why the Phoenicians, as they transported this silver to Greece and Asia and to all other peoples, acquired great wealth. Diodorus Siculus, Library of History.
So, for question number 5, using the primary source, how did the Phoenicians' exports show how they made use of their resources? So, this whole primary source is very important, so it's all highlighted for you. So, pause the video and get that answer down.
Colonies and city-states. Phoenician sailors found many sheltered harbors along the Mediterranean coast. At first, these places served as trading stations where ships stopped to pick up water, food, and other supplies. Those areas with fertile land or other resources attracted farmers and other settlers. Those settlements grew into colonies. A colony is an area ruled by a distant country. When Phoenicia came under attack by Assyrians and others starting in the 800s BCE, many Phoenicians left Phoenicia. They migrated to their colonies for safety. A few Phoenician.
So, question number 6, you will see that this is a quiz question. It is highlighted and in red. Scroll back down to this for you. So, an area ruled by a distant country is called, you'll be able to find that in this paragraph here in the yellow circled area. So pause the video and get that answer.
Developed into wealthy city-states. One was Carthage on the North African coast. Carthage eventually became rich and powerful, setting up its own colonies and fighting 3 wars against the powerful Romans. In the last of these wars, the Romans destroyed Carthage. Over time, the Roman Empire took over all of the Phoenician city-states and colonies.
So, for this paragraph that we just read, go to slide number 7. You will see that this also is a quiz question. So, which city was originally a Phoenician colony? You'll find that in this last paragraph here. So pause the video if you need more time. Get that answer down. So now you're going to have to click next. So that's going to be 3 total clicks from the start. So click next. We can now move into slide number 8. Now we're going to be getting into what is the cultural legacy of the Phoenicians.
What is the cultural legacy of the Phoenicians? Phoenicia did not survive, but some of its achievements did last. Greece and Rome absorbed parts of Phoenician culture through cultural diffusion. Cultural diffusion is the spreading of cultural traits from one region to another. The Phoenicians' legacy included the spread of its culture and a new way of writing.
So question number 1, page number 8, what is cultural diffusion? You'll be able to find it in the yellow circled area of this first paragraph. So pause the video and get that answer down.
Links to other societies. Through trade, the Phoenicians linked the diverse peoples and cultures around the Mediterranean region and beyond. In the process, Phoenicians helped ideas spread. They passed parts of their culture on to the Greeks. For example, the Greeks used the Phoenician standard of weights and measures. Greek culture later spread throughout the entire Mediterranean region, and its influence continues today.
So, question number 2, page number 8. You can see that this is a quiz question right here. Why were the Phoenicians able to spread their culture over a wide area? So, you'll see that this whole paragraph is highlighted. That's because this whole paragraph has a lot of information that is really important to answering this question. So make sure you're getting all aspects of this paragraph. Remember, put it in your own words, but make sure you get that answer down. Pause the video if you need to, and we'll be moving on. Okay, so now we're moving into page number 9 of our digital notebook. You'll see that that is this area where we're starting at, right where it says the alphabet, right underneath this illustration right here.
The alphabet. The Greeks also adopted the Phoenician way of writing. Before the Phoenicians, the main writing system in the ancient Near East was cuneiform. In cuneiform, symbols represent syllables or whole words. In order to be able to write, a person had to learn and remember hundreds of symbols. The Phoenicians developed an alphabet. An alphabet is a small set of letters or symbols, each of which stands for a single sound. The Phoenician alphabet had 22 symbols. Each symbol stood for a consonant sound. This new approach to writing was a major improvement over cuneiform. Now, instead of having to memorize hundreds of different symbols, a person only had to know 22 symbols in order to write. This alphabet made writing much easier to learn, making it possible for more people to learn how to write.
So for question number 3, you'll see that this is a quiz question right here. In the Phoenician alphabet, symbols were used to represent what? You will find the answer to this in this middle paragraph right here. So pause the video and get that answer.
People who traded with the Phoenicians learned their alphabet in order to communicate with them. By 750 BCE, the Greeks had begun using the Phoenician alphabet. Around 500 BCE, the Greeks added letters to represent vowels. They also gave the letters names. The word alphabet comes from the first 2 letters in the Greek alphabet, alpha and beta.
So question number 4, page 9, we have, how did Phoenician culture, particularly its alphabet, affect later cultures? So you'll notice that I have this whole paragraph highlighted green. So this explains very well, particularly how the alphabet affected cultures later. So make sure to get the big points and the answer out of this here paragraph.
Around 100 BCE, the Romans adopted the Greek alphabet. The Romans changed some letters. The result was an alphabet that looks much like ours today. The Romans carried their culture across much of Europe and into other lands. Their language and system of writing was adopted in those lands. Through that process, it passed into widespread use. While it is the Roman form of writing that became the alphabet used to write English, that writing system had its origins in ancient Phoenicia. Reading check. Compare and...
So now we're going to move on to page 10 of the digital notebook and click Next. You'll see here this is going into the development of the modern Latin alphabet. So from the original page, you'll have to click Next 4 times. And then we're going to get into this interactive gallery. So in order to answer this question, which is what did the Greeks do to modify the Phoenician alphabet? So click on this, make sure you click through it. You'll click these arrows to get from place to place. And look for the answer in this gallery. Press pause if needed. So now that we're finished with the lesson, We'll go back to page 1 of the digital notebook as well as the e-text. So for the quiz, we're going to have all of these vocab words defined properly. So in order to do that accurately, go to the bottom of this first page and get the definitions from here or the presentation. Then we also go to page 3 of the digital notebook. We'll see question number 2. The goods made and shipped by Phoenicians to other lands are called. That will be on the quiz. You have to click next one time to find that. Now on page number 6 of the digital notebook for question number 6, you'll have to click next 2 times to find this. An area ruled by a distant country is called. So find that answer by clicking next 2 times. On page 7, we have another quiz question, which is, which city was originally a Phoenician colony? Same as the last slide, you need to click next 2 times from the original page. That's where you're going to find that answer. On page 8, question 2, you're going to have to click next 3 times from the original page. But we have, why were the Phoenicians able to spread their culture over a wide area? And on page number 9, question number 3 will be on the quiz. In the Phoenician alphabet, symbols were used to represent what? Again, you'll have to click next 3 times, and then you can find the answer in the writing. And with all that, if we get all this done, you'll be ready for the quiz.